Hi, guys. Welcome back to the podcast. You'll know what the title of this podcast is because you'll have seen the title and it will be live. But we had lots of feedback on what we should call this collaboration, Eric. And I've been thinking about it a little bit before we popped on air, maybe the last hour or so, as I was thinking about what we're going to talk about. And I was going through some of the suggestions. And I actually really do like stronger culture. I know I went with Iron Stronger. Iron Stronger before, but something about stronger culture that the culture thing is now speaking to me there. I don't know if you had any additional thoughts on what came through.
Iron Revival also sounds kind of cool. So, as you know, we asked the Dear Cult and the Dear Audience of Revive Stronger to give us feedback. And you know what? It actually worked really well with not only the episode we had, but also the episode I just had with Trex. So the last episode with Trex, I don't know if you listened to it. We yeah. Oh, cool. Good timing. We carried on the some of the conversation we had because we kind of talked about, hey, fitness kind of sucks online. And then Trex was like, you know why? It's because it's dominated by grandiose narcissists. And we talked about the big five. And there's a couple of traits in there. There's agreeableness. And this is just basically your propensity to have a desire to find consensus with others or find differences, and whether you actually enjoy agreeing or disagreeing. And there's a very, excuse me, a little bit of Pepsi Max came out there. There tends to be very low agreeableness traits on people who post a lot online, on average, and also obviously higher extroversion, which is understandable, which we kind of all know what that is. And then people who want to become like YouTubers. And I think this is an important distinction. I was thinking about this. I was like, well, I want to be on social media, but you and I, like Steve, you're a full-time coach and you're also on social media. I'm a like full-time three things. And I also want to be on social media. Like I still coach. I'm an active researcher. I'm a supervisor. I do a fair number of things. And there's a lot of people who need the internet for their job, right? And then there's people who are like, I just want the internet to be my job. What I want to do in my life is be seen, So that kind of element of grandiose narcissism, and low conscientiousness, because it's like, well, if I need to be seen by this community, I got to do the thing they care about, but I don't really care about doing that well. Primarily just want to be seen. And I was just found like what our experiences were and what we talked about, and kind of people getting gurued and then leaning into it and getting worse and falls from grace. Just how well it was explained by the fact that this has actually been researched quite well. And then I also saw it playing out in the comment section, because I guarantee you the people who stuck to the question we asked, do you like Iron Stronger or Revive Culture better? And they chose one of the two options. They had a very high conscientiousness trait from the big five, which is, oh, I'm a rule follower. I was told to pick between two. This is what I'm going to choose. And conscientiousness isn't always a good or a bad thing. Like, I think it's easy to look at the big five and be like, oh, these are good things or bad things. But most of them, it's very context dependent and independent on the other things. Because the names that you and I just chose that we liked, and we haven't found consensus, which is great, they came from people who were not necessarily rule followers, but were still helping us find the best name. Very, purpose of trying to make it as best as it could be, which I love. So there were some really cool ideas, takes on Iron, Stronger, Revive, and Culture, all combined together. And yeah, so okay, I offered mine up, you offered yours up. Which one do you like better now that we both said different ones? And don't be too agreeable. If you like yours better, just say it, Steve.
It's funny you talk through that, because even hearing that someone might enjoy disagreeing, like people have a preference to disagree with others. For me, I do not even relate to that in one bit, because I'm all about agreement, finding consensus. Even if I have debates, quote unquote, on here, I'm like, I want to find where have they crossed lines where they agree on this, because there's always something that we can kind of come together with. And like you said, I don't think that's always a good thing. Like, having some disagreement can be productive and provide, and sometimes I think I've even done this where I've maybe felt an internal disagreement but I'm going to just agree because it feels easier that way, which is not productive either. And as I've grown and matured, I've got a little bit better at that. And with that said, I actually still prefer stronger culture. So
Let's
we're going to
do
have
it.
to get
See,
people to vote now.
no, you know what? Because my agreeableness is it's not super high. Now, here's the thing: is I actually haven't taken the Big Five. I've taken a related personality inventory called the TCI. Um, but I think I have interactions between like neuroticism, agreeableness, and conscientiousness, where I have like this really strong drive to get it right. Um, but I have a high level of agreeableness, so it's like I don't need someone to accept my version of right. But when there is something like I need you to understand what I mean and this way of interpreting it, and like it's like an itch, So like when we're talking about things that are very clearly like factual, like did this study find this? That's why I can be very pedantic and kind of like nail somebody down, but I try to do it in a human way. But yeah, anyway, I like
the,
I
the
like
Big
I have
Five, sorry,
stronger.
Eric.
Yes,
That's
sir.
acronyms, right? A lot of the time, like I can't think of what one of them is, but they like you're a number of letters. Is that right?
No, that's
Or is that
Myers
different?
Briggs, like the
That's the,
INFP,
yeah,
ISTJ.
yeah.
That's the
That's
one
the
that
one
everyone
I'm very
thinks.
familiar with. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one's actually not reliable. That one actually is. I don't want to say it's like complete pseudoscience. It probably does map to some things, but if you look up research on the Myers Briggs personality testing, it is not sufficiently reliable and doesn't really map onto, um, I would say, neurobiological traits like the TCI and the Big Five does. So I think I described this in the last Iron Culture episode. There's a big difference between states and traits. So
Yeah.
a trait is something that's relatively, at least once you're into adulthood and you're not, undergoing some, massive trauma or personality changes, therapy, drugs, head injuries, etc. Um, Relatively stable and within a semi known range for a given person, obviously modifiable and can be impacted by acute stimuli. And that's what a state is. You can find temporary changes and things. But yeah, like if you were to take the Myers Briggs in a lot of different circumstances, you did get different things. Um, so yeah, and yeah, the Big Five and TCI they map onto our understanding of the human brain a little more than Myers Briggs. So yeah, and I don't think there's no value in it. Like I have gone through a Myers Briggs personality typing thing with my wife back in the day before I really knew much about research. Found it interesting. Had a lot of quibbles. Probably unsurprisingly, people who know me. But I did find it a useful way of kind of knowing and accepting yourself and some of your tendencies. And, you kind of self-select and identify with the things that are probably more reliable and some of the things that are less reliable. You go, well, that's not me, but whatever. And then you can go, oh, you're this way, I'm this way. And I think it can be a good way to connect and maybe it has practical utility. But yeah, no, Big Five, TCI, those are very reliable, sufficiently reliable, very valid, and consistently used studies in psychology research. But anyway, you know what? I like your Steve, and this is just it isn't just the agreeable person in me. So I think we go with it, man. We gotta
I'm
we gotta
happy
pick
with it.
one. Yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. But
Your
are the people
chat
happy with it?
there, yeah, we are. They got to let us know. Your chat there just reminded me of, yeah, I think it's just a general thing in life where you kind of accept things at face value. So me and Charlotte, my partner, we love watching trash TV, and quite a lot of it is like Love Island, for example, where you get all these young singles together and so on and so forth. And something I had accepted for the longest time until I thought about it a bit more critically, and I was chatting with Greg Potter. He came over to London for a short time because he's busy traveling the world, and love languages came up. It just made me think of what you talked
Yeah.
about there. It's like, I thought they were like an evidence-based, like you actually have like a love language. It's like, no, it's just something someone made up.
Dude, there's so many of those. I didn't do it for March, but I think I'm going to do it for the April episode issue of Mass. I'm going to write about some of these pop science things that we believe are evidence based and just give a bunch of them and to kind of show people like, hey, think about it. Almost every time you hear a pop science thing, it's probably a little bit wrong, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, one that kind of blew my mind, you know, the idea that some people are visual learners, some people are auditory learners, and
Yep.
some people are kinesthetic learners. Bullshit. Not a thing. Yeah, it really just comes down to your processing power, your familiarity with the information from before, and how it is taught by the person, and your own. It's very like it's way more context dependent than that. Like no one is, you know, like someone's not like if you think about it this way, like, oh, we're gonna teach everyone how to ride a bike. And the visual learners are just going to
Yeah.
watch people ride a bike. You know, the auditory learners, they're just going to listen to a tape about how to ride a bike. And then these people are going to be, you know, they're going to get on the bike and try it out. And then the next one's going to be like, okay, you know, we're going to have you memorize a series of numbers. Um, these people are going to hold blocks that are shaped like the numbers and put them in a row. These people are going to look at a picture of it, and these people are just going to hear it read out. You can immediately see that some of these tasks are going to be far better suited to one of those mediums. And it also depends upon like what prior exposure does that individual have to numbers or bike riding, right? So all of these things kind of have created this sense. And there are some things that are just inherently better taught with the visual or sometimes auditory is actually quite important. You know, like there's a reason why podcasts do so well, but what you say and how you say it matters. Like telling a
Hmm.
story, the oral tradition is a huge part of how humans passed along knowledge. So anyway, what are
That'll be
we?
fun.
Stronger culture? We're stronger culture, right?
Stronger culture. That's the one. And
I
I
like
was
that.
actually Eric Trexler for me was well, the other Eric does a great job of just breaking down. I trying to think of other examples, but he did a great job of breaking down that kind of popular thought concept that P ratios, the leaner you were, the better partitioning
Hmm.
ratio you got, you're going to gain more, you're going to put more of that surplus towards muscle versus fat. And those have been fantastic. So I think it's, yeah, when you bring out the broader pop culture ones, I'm sure there's going to be dozens in there that I'm just like, hell, I've fallen for way too many of that. Or hopefully at this point, more skeptical, which kind of being in this evidence-based sphere hopefully brings out from you. But as a reminder, guys, you should definitely subscribe to the Mass Research Review so you can stay on top of all this stuff. It's highly recommended from me. If you enjoy these chats, you enjoy Eric, you just enjoy those. And as a coach and practitioner, like it serves as, it's great because it's kind of like a textbook. Like I'd get a textbook off and I'd like look something up if I needed a reminding. But you can just go on Mass Search and it basically has the studies there, or you've done something on the topic, whether that be for content or for just, I don't know, a client asks you a tricky question. Completely random question, Eric, and it's just happened to me because the other day, don't know if you ever get this, someone knocks on your door and they're trying to sell you something. Do you get sales, like random just sale calls at your door and you're just like, leave me alone, I'm in the middle of a call, or I'm on the Stronger Culture podcast?
We are like in an apartment complex now, so no, but back in the day,
Oh,
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
that was, yeah, when we didn't own a house and we were in an apartment complex, that was great because then I wouldn't get any. I just want to be introverted, not see anyone, not have sales calls. We have a Ring doorbell though. Do you guys have Ring doorbells where yeah, you do, with the video so you can see who's at the front door? You might not have one, but
It's we don't, but some people do. It's like an inner area with a bunch of like duplexes, so you can set it up that way if you want. We haven't yet, but
this
yeah,
will make sense when I get, at least you
I'm
understand
ready.
what I'm talking about.
You're laying the
I see
groundwork.
I'm just like, no one wants it. But the number of they're called cold DMs. I don't know where I
Mm.
guess it's a cold DM because there's no, the warm would be if there was a lead or you'd
Yeah,
already
it's like for
started
cold
talking.
calls. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. There you go. That's what, that makes sense. Anyway, obviously hate them. I get so many cold DMs from appointment setters now. That's like the big thing. And
Yes.
do you get these like tons as well, or do you get different people cold DMing you?
Dude, I get probably 3 a day saying they've either gotten a list from some type of scrubbing service or maybe it's from Libsyn or whatever, but it either says like Omar Isuf, Eric and Eric, or some random combination of 3 of us, but to my email, because I think it's probably the one associated with iron culture. And then it's almost always some person asking for someone else to come on the podcast with a pitch. And it's always like, I really liked your episode with Steve Hall where you talked about, X, Y, and Z. And it's like, I'd like to bring on this crystal healing expert. I think it would resonate with your audience. And I'm like, those two things are completely unrelated. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Literally 4 a day.
What about that's a great point, because I didn't even think about the fact I get those emails all the time too. But on your
Yeah.
Instagram, do you get like people
Oh
trying
my
to be
God.
like appointment setters for like, hey, we can get you clients or whatever it is?
Oh yeah. So in my requests,
Yeah.
I have like, hey, I saw
Yeah,
your
there.
recent post about this. Like basically it's people who either grow your Instagram following, help you monetize your content, edit your videos, or appointment setters. And yeah, my requests are, I check them once a day and I just see if it's someone who's actually just trying to connect legit.
Yeah.
And then almost everything else is just like, why do I even open this? So,
The worst is when they kind of like they don't make it obvious that they are who they are, and they ask like a question that seems like, oh, they're just like a person trying to learn, and so you like click on it, maybe you reply, and then they leave you a voice note that's like, oh, so the reason I was contacting you is
yep.
and I'm like, oh god damn it, you caught me. So yeah, it's super frustrating, which is actually, it's great talking to you, Eric, because similar to you, I mean, when did you guys officially start online coaching? What year was it?
Officially, we started in 2009.
That's crazy. The number of online coaches on, like, it must have been literally on your hands. You could count the number of online coaching services available at that time.
Mate, we sat down to do like an analysis of who's currently in the space. And we were like, all right, so what does Joe Klimczewski and Lane Norton do? And that was it. It was market analysis was Joe and Lane. That was it.
That's
Yeah,
so wild.
now there's literally tens of thousands. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I started in 2014, really, is when I started taking some people online. And that was early. But now it's,
Oh, yeah.
it's because these guys will reach out to me and be like, how long have you been coaching for? Like, are you struggling to get leads with it saturated? I'm like, man, they're it. Like, every
Mhm.
person on, like, you probably struggled to tell family and friends what you did for a job back then, whereas now they all get it because they're just like, yeah, online personal training, that's like a legit career. So anyway, it's just us being old dogs in this space.
Yeah,
But on that
but
note, actually,
you're
Eric,
not wrong
sorry,
though. So anyway, yeah.
continue.
So you're getting, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because on that note, we're just talking off air, and you're saying how, hey, 3DMJ in a great spot, Mass Research Review in a great spot. So I'm getting a good transition towards a new role that you've picked up recently, which is going to take quite a bit of time, but it's exciting.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, it's a stable spot, I think is, I don't know about you, but there was like, everyone was like, oh, COVID ended in 2021, at least the lockdowns did. And now we're going to have a bit of an economic downturn, but this next year it's going to be great. And then like they've said that for the last like 3 years. Um, and I don't think all of it's COVID related anymore, but I do think it's harder and harder to sell information. So yeah, like you have to kind of stay on your P's and Q's as someone who's a science communicator, and especially if you monetize that. So, like thinking a lot about how to write my books, and that's why they were probably delayed by about a year. And then us trying to constantly think about how are we operating at mass? Like how many of articles, like we release a big issue. People read all of it. Do we need to be deep dive and narrow or broad? Are our issues too long? Those who've been subscribed a while might have noticed we were playing with quick takes for a while and research briefs, and a little more video content. And we were also polling our audience and just trying to get a feel for how do we communicate the information the community wants in the most effective, efficient way that's useful to them as possible, to effectively stay viable. So anyway, I don't think we cracked that code, but we have developed systems so that we can continually stay on top of it. And we're also looking into expanding our offerings in other ways. But we have systems for that, and we've got a good, like, I'd say a stable kind of position. We all know our roles a little bit better. 3DMJ, similar thing. We just updated our website. Most importantly, I'm not dieting to compete at Worlds this year, and my books are finished. So Um, Change has kind of been like the nature of things lately. And one of the big changes that's going on in my life as an academic is that at AUT, they've restructured the Faculty of Health and Environmental Sciences. So people know that university have kind of structured hierarchical systems of like different levels. Like you have the university at the top, where there's like the vice chancellor or the president, depending on the country you're in, or what have you. And then you have a level down from that, and a level down from that, and a level down from that. In New Zealand and in like I think Oceania and some of Europe, what we have is the university, then faculties, and then within the faculties there are schools, and within the schools there are departments. And that's kind of the lowest like level of organization. And you can have a big department, like that has 30, 40, 50 people at probably the largest. And then you can have really small ones. It's like 4 people if it's in kind of a more niche area. And they deliver courses. They have, research they're doing depending upon the field. And then the schools can be variable and quite big. And then faculties are really big. So I'm in the Faculty of Health and Environmental Sciences, and there's, thousands of people. AUT is a pretty big university. Um, and it changed from a model where it has 4 schools to 6, and also totally restructured how the leadership sits within those and interacts with the schools. And I sit within the school, which just changed its name from Sport and Recreation to Sport, Health, and Exercise Science. So, um, so anyway, another thing that's changing simultaneously is what we call our entities framework, our research entities framework. So we have different bodies of researchers who sit across various faculties, schools, departments, all that stuff, who do research, right? Because a big part of universities is research. It's not just delivering undergraduate courses, it's doing postgraduate courses, which may then have a component to, okay, your master's or your honors or your PhD has a thesis or a dissertation, and you're doing research and you're getting supervised by a staff member. And that staff member maybe not just doing postgraduate research supervision, but have their own research. And depending upon the university, the field, they might be doing external grants or internal funding or industry connections to do research. And the way that's kind of incubated, promoted, and how we support staff at AUT and many universities is you have various different kind of lateral entities that support researchers. And the biggest one historically in AUT, which has been it's the newest university in New Zealand. It went from being a technical institute to an actual university in like I think 2000. So it's like 25, 26 years old, which is young for a university, but it's grown the fastest, and it's the highest ranked sports science school in New Zealand, and it's top 50 in the world. Largely because it's a really strong sports science program, and largely because of SPRINS. It was historically called the Sports Performance Research Institute New Zealand, which is now just rebranded, more change, as the Sport Research Institute New Zealand, because it's become broader and broader, and it does things like, sociological topics in sport leadership, governance. It does a lot of industry connections. But anyway, that's where I came and where I'd been to do my master's, PhD, and now where I work. And because there's been this change in the research entities framework, largely modeled off of SPRINS, to be patting ourselves on the back, to be like, oh, how do we replicate the success of this institute? And the faculty's changing, and SPRINS is rebranding, and the school that I'm a part of is rebranding, and the relationship between the school, the faculty, and the institutes is changing. I saw that there was an opportunity for me to get back and help, and no one else wanted to step up and do it. Everybody's busy. This is a big deal. So they put out expressions of interest for the co-directors of SPRINS. That's the model we have historically used, having, a couple directors, just because if you count the postgraduate research students, there's around 200 total staff at SPRINS, like professional staff, academics, students, supervisors, and then people who are on quote unquote soft money doing research. And I put in that expression of interest kind of last quarter of last year. And then I interviewed end of last year, and then I actually became one of the 2 co-directors in January, which is, man, do I feel like an adult, Steve. But it's a big deal. It's a huge responsibility, but it's also a huge honor. And it's great because it gives me an opportunity to pay it forward, because the environment at SPRINS has been just so welcoming, so healthy, and also like really productive. And it's a place where if you want to do any kind of sport related research, like we find a way. And we have world leading labs and a lot of people and great collaboration. And it's um, just a really effective organic ecosystem that promotes research and researchers. So yeah, having the opportunity to step up and do that, it's been very, very I would say time demanding. It's like front loaded because there's a lot of these changes that we have to now step in and be intentional about. Okay, well, how do we modify our operations to make this as effective as we can for us, who we are now and what we need? And how do I represent diverse, needs of all the people who might be doing sport related research? You and I kind of think about like, body comp, strength, things like that. But that's a small segment of what sits under, sport related research, not even sports science, right? Because there's sport historians, there are sports
Sure.
sociologists, there's everything. And we don't necessarily have all of that represented at Sprints, but I would say sports science is, at most 50% of what we do. And so anyway, that has been a really, I would say, challenging in a very positive way journey. It's I have to stretch myself and really leverage the skills I've developed, but in like a deeper pool. Like I've moved from like the kiddie pool. I've always played the role of kind of the mediator, the communicator, the connector, the person who tries to understand the needs of various people in an organization and then bring it together. But I've done that at much smaller scales. 3DMJ, if you count like all of our total administrative staff, it's 8 people. So, mass is the four of us. And when I've worked in, personal training or when I've operated within sprints from the prior perspective I was in, where I was the lab leader for the strength conditioning lab, or I was on the student culture team, I was dealing with kind of a large, but not quite as large segment. And now I need to be sitting down and meeting with people who are in industry, government, policy, across the faculty, across schools. So it's something that is asking me to stretch myself, but that I'm really enjoying. And it's just, it's really cool because it gives me the opportunity to help a lot of people who have helped me. And yeah. So anyway, that's the big news for me. And I didn't want to announce it until it was like official. And it's pretty official.
I love, and it doesn't surprise me that it's a role that you wanted to take on because it's a way of giving back. I think whilst a lot of the things you do, like the mass research review, you could argue is just like, hey, it's paying the bills and that sort of thing. But it's also a way of, I view it as a way of you guys giving back. The number of podcasts that you're on, Eric, I don't know where I even was. I think I was just on YouTube, and you must be part of my algorithm or something, Eric. But there was like so many dotted podcasts. I was like, oh, there's another one. It's incredible the kind of time and dedication you put out to these things. And yeah, again, it comes back favorably in terms of your name's out there, and then people can find ways of parting with money to kind of invest into your products and services or what have you. But I know a lot of it just comes from, hey, this person asked me to come on and I want to be on their podcast to share this knowledge. So it doesn't surprise me that you're kind of doing it from that perspective, but also it sounds like probably for someone like me and a lot of the audience, they won't quite realize how important this role is, even though you just described it and everything. But I'm not part of academics, and I haven't been to the university over there or anything, and kind of exposed myself to all of that. But yeah, again, it sounds like it means a lot to you, the role, versus necessarily it being like the most highest paying role out there available type of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like when you look at academia, sometimes it's if you're not within it, you don't know which things are promotions and which things are appointments, and they're not the same. So like someone might be a lecturer, a senior lecturer, a associate professor, and a professor. Those are kind of independent of what maybe your appointment is. Um, but you might be a dean, or you might be a head of department, or you might be the co-director of an institute. And in many cases, those don't change your income at all. They're not they're not kind of like promotions like the pathway to professor is. They're part of your academic service, and they can help you put in a bid to become a professor. And there are definitely some people who take on appointments just to climb the ladder. But, and like you said, even when I'm doing things like coming on a podcast for free or speaking for free or, answering a DM, like, someone could argue that it's all part of, erichelms.com trying to get money in his pocket through the big fat cow of cash called, physique and strength sports science communication, which, whether you talk to Elon Musk or Alan Greenspan, like, that's the real way to make money in this world. Um, and I neglected to mention, I don't just have an apartment in this complex. I actually own this apartment complex and 30 more, and most of
Your
Auckland.
butlers stay in the other
Yeah,
the other
well,
rooms.
I bought out all the apartments around me because I don't want neighbors. That's something for the peons, really. They're just empty. And I like, people ask, oh, can I rent this? And I'm like, you couldn't afford to rent there. And I'm like, what? And I just kick them out and throw caviar at them. But no, so yeah, like, what I do in AUT, however, has always been it's like I'm not paid for it. And it's not like they don't show me gratitude, but I've had, they call it FTE here, like the proportion of time that you spend, and they count it out of one. So when I first came on as a research fellow to provide supervision support, at AUT, at Sprins, I was a 0.2. So that's like 8 hours a week or something like that. And then eventually, this wasn't even actually adding time. It was just to better reflect the amount of time that I was putting in. I went to 0.3. And this now for the Sprints director role, the Sprints director role doesn't pay you anymore. But I did ask, listen, if I want to do this right, and still be able to supervise my students, but I'll step away from the lab leader role. I'll step away from the culture team role. I need a little more FTE. Can you guys get me to 0.5? Because I can make the space for that. So now I'm actually on a half contract. So now I'm part-time in the way that most people would think of part-time, but I was even less than that previously. So the only reason I'm getting, additional income from AUT now is because I'm working more. But I didn't get a quote unquote promotion per se. I got an appointment, and it's an important one, but it's not one that I take personal pride in the way people might think, like, oh, I got selected to be the head of Sprints. I actually feel a strong sense of responsibility, emotional weight, and I think a healthy sense of fear around this, because I've looked at all of my colleagues, some of them who were professors when I was a master's student here. They were academics when I was in high school, right? Um, they have acknowledged me and said, yeah, this is good, and given me positive feedback, and they're supporting me to be in a leadership position of an institute that they saw get founded as a key critical component, and that they put their lifeblood into. My primary supervisor in my PhD is one of the people who basically built Sprins alongside some of the other professors. So to have their trust, and that means a lot, and it means that I don't get to mess this up, right? People are depending upon me, and I'm not alone. I have all of them, and I think I have certain beliefs about leadership that I think are important. Like, it's not my job to be in control. It's my job to represent everyone and to make sure that I can find a strategic direction that doesn't leave anyone behind, and that also represents the mission that was there before me. It's not, now I put my hand on the steering wheel and go, here's where we're going, team, and you should have gone here the whole time. There's just a big difference when you're leading an organization that you didn't found, so being an owner of Mass or being an owner of 3D Muscle Journey, it is like, it's still a consensus based decision, but it's a tight knit group who formed it and are now leading it. AUT was around before I got here, right? And if the strategic direction of AUT is something that I 90% agree with, I don't get to go no. I go, all right, well, that's where we're at. I've decided to take on the responsibility to be a representative of everyone else at Sprins, to be a representative of my school, the faculty, and AUT generally. So I need to be kind of on board with that, even if there are aspects I don't agree with. And that's a level of kind of adulting that I haven't done before. I've kind of always felt like I'm the maverick. I do my own thing, and I'm an entrepreneur. And I think some of that feels like emotionally safe, like I don't, if I don't like where the world's going, I can say, oh, we're just doing our own thing here. And I've always had a relationship with AUT where I'm part-time, I do my own thing, my income is dependent upon my own businesses. And it's kind of like, it's like two different parties who are shaking hands and helping each other. But emotionally and culturally, I've been embedded in Sprints. I have students. I spend time there. I have deep connections with all the people there. And when I saw the opportunity to be in a leadership role, not within, say, the hierarchy of the university, but for Sprints specifically, and to pay that forward, I was like, that I think was a really good fit for me. But it's also meant learning a lot about the university structures and gaining an appreciation and um, taking on that sense of duty in a broader sense, from from like that perspective, and that has been a learning process for me. So anyway, all that is to
I bet.
say, it's a big change. It's a big change for me,
Yeah.
and it's not one that I take lightly.
Sounds positive, and I think they're going to benefit massively from having you there. And yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes and how much you enjoy it. The only way I can vaguely relate to it as you were talking through that, Eric, was being asked to judge and then judging on
Mm.
on a WNBF judging panel. Like, I felt that kind of sense of responsibility and a bit kind of almost scared a little bit, especially the first time I was doing it, to kind of do the WNBF and everyone on stage justice for that thing. But again, as a judge, like, I don't know if you were, but most aren't paid to kind of go and judge.
Nope.
It's like you take your own time, kind of you do it for the love of natural bodybuilding and everything there. And yeah, you might pick up some lessons and skill sets and get your name out there a little bit more, but mostly you're doing it for the love of the sport, I think.
Yeah, no, judging is definitely giving back. You sit there all day, you might get lunch, and I line it up with seminars to kind of subsidize it, but I've never been paid to
That makes
judge.
sense. Yeah.
Right. And actually, I think that's a really good perspective. Here's an example of what I think is maybe not great leadership, that you can kind of see the parallel between the way some people don't lead well and others lead well. Is if a WNBF or any judge, any kind of organization, like if and I can understand why you would do this, because you sometimes it's about making the athlete feel better. But like, and I've even said things like this, but I think if you take a step back and really think about it, an athlete gets a placing they don't agree with, and maybe you didn't even put it that way, and they come to you, they're complaining, they're really disgruntled, they're unhappy, and you go, well, that's not how I ranked you,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and there's two ways you can do that. You can say, you know what, I'm an infallible judge. Sorry, I'm a fallible judge, just like the whole panel, but we are stronger together. And I had you here if it's appropriate to do so. Sometimes there's contexts where that's not an appropriate thing to share with the athlete, or there's a mechanism for sharing feedback, because there can be potential conflicts of interest there, or some people like
Yeah.
poach clients or have an inappropriate relationship. So whatever the judging standards are, and I think there is delicacy around this, you can share, like, listen, you didn't get a unanimous score. I can't share with you my own score. And it doesn't mean that every judge agrees with your eventual score, but it's probably the best representation of the closest thing we can get to objectivity in our sport. I might have had you
Yeah.
higher. Some people might have had you even lower than you were. And you help them, work through that. But what I think is a failure of leadership that dissolves your responsibility as a judge is to say, well, that fucking panel doesn't know what they're doing. You came in second. I had you in first. And you know what? If it had been up to me, I would have given you first. So don't look at me. I'm the good guy. I'm right here with you. You're awesome. Nothing to
Yeah.
learn. Go blame those people. Now you're throwing, your basically your responsibilities, your duty, and the organization that you said I'm happy to volunteer for and serve under the bus, to preserve your own sense of comfort emotionally,
Yeah.
or to potentially manipulate a relationship. Right. So that's an example of something that it's easy to do and not think about it. And maybe you don't even have all of those intentions, but it could come off that way. That's why it feels heavy and weighty to me in this role, because that is now a much, much bigger thing than just a panel of 7 judges. And,
Yeah.
not that judging isn't a big deal. Sometimes you got shows of hundreds of people. You have presidents on the panel. They're going to judge you at some point. You're managing conflicts of interest. It's a thing. So I think that's actually not a bad parallel, Steve, even though running a research institute and, ranking people's naked bodies aren't exactly the same.
Oh yeah, but that, very well said. Yeah, I always think we're to act as a panel of judges. Like you talk as if you're talking as the judging table, not as an
Yes.
individual judge to that person. It always brings me back to that great book where the title gives away everything: Extreme Ownership. Where it's just like
Hmm.
that's the kind of how I like to live, like my life. Like, and it gives me a lot of self-efficacy that way too, but also responsibility. Eric, do you think we have 20 minutes? I had one topic for us to discuss I think might be a bit meaty for people. If you're finished on kind of your new responsibilities, we can dive into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. We have 40 minutes of Eric Helms being self-indulgent, and then 20
People
minutes
love
of
hearing
something people
updates from
want to
Eric. I
hear.
do.
Well, okay,
Do
if you ask me, then I have to explain it, and then here we are, and I'm a grandiose narcissist. Yeah, okay, let's do it. Yeah, no, no, no. Let's talk about it because I think this is a cool topic and something that we can, I think, have
yeah.
some good information for the listener on.
Yeah, and I think it might even be that it ends up being another episode based off kind of comments and feedback, or we didn't quite touch on everything we wanted to. But definitely Eric will be aware of this, and the audience will be too, where people talk about the 1% within bodybuilding, muscle growth, and pursuing that. And that, yeah, I mean, it might only be a 1%, which is insignificant, really. But if you kind of get another 1%, another 1%, another 1%, suddenly that becomes 5, 10%. That starts to become a significant portion of your results and progress. And for Eric and myself, pro natural bodybuilders, really have to be on top of our 1%, as it were, if you can put it that way, to grow as much muscle as possible, to be competitive in the pro ranks. And we both probably, some people would argue, yeah, certainly some people would argue, give too much time and attention to our training, but we'll almost do anything for growth. But there is a cost versus benefit of these things. And certainly for myself, Eric, there's times of which I look back and I'm like, man, I was doing that for this 1% supposed benefit, and really it just cost me 5, 10%. So whilst those 1% can add up, you have to remember there's, for every gimme, I like to say there's a gotcha. Nothing comes for free. So like easy example is I'm going to add forearm training, neck training, I'm going to train my sartorius, like my what's the front side of your calf, your tibia, that's the one, tibia raises, train every single muscle group. It's like that's time and energy that you're taking away potentially from other areas, and suddenly you could be not really growing as much muscle as you thought, even though you're trying to grow more and get those 1%. So Eric, I put it to you, what are there any examples you can think of that you personally do that you consider as 1%ers that have, one, been something that you do invest into, and then others that you're like, actually I don't? And I'll be interested to see if there's anything that we don't quite see eye to eye. I imagine we will, but see eye to eye on things, because I mean that's why we're here, right? Because we like each other and mostly our perspectives align.
And also, we have very similar contexts. Neither one of us are
Yeah.
parents. We're both professional natural bodybuilders. And I think we both look at our career as professional natural bodybuilders as we take it as seriously as someone who is in another professional sport. Whether that is, laughable is up to the people watching us. And I can understand a perspective being like, yeah, you guys don't get paid to flex on stage. And even if you moved up a couple rankings, you're still not getting paid. You guys are idiots. But I think ultimately people don't realize that all athletes at the professional level, to get there in the first place, they had to go through being a professional in their mindset before they got to a point where they could ever be paid. Um, and that has to mean something to them, and they have to have strong intrinsic motivation. So whether or not there is a potential pot of gold at the end of that rainbow in every sport, I think many athletes have a mindset like us. It is just that bodybuilding is also like a practice. It's something people do. You keep doing it after you retire. It's not like a team sport or playing soccer in the same way. So we sit alongside people who identify as bodybuilders who never compete, who, even if they do compete, maybe do it more recreationally, I would say, or as a hobby. And I don't think, for me, and I assume for you, Steve, that hobby quite encapsulates how I feel about it.
Yeah.
To me, it diminishes how much it means to me and how much I give to it. And competing is I'm not going to stop lifting after I compete. So it doesn't fully encapsulate it either. So this is part of who I am. I'm intrinsically motivated to do it. I do enjoy competing. I will never stop lifting, and I'm going to take it as far as I can. And it is a vehicle for me to test myself. And all of those things still don't even represent how much I care about it. So with that context, I don't think there's going to be much that differs between us. It's really just going to be like, how do we evaluate the individual thing? And if the cost to benefit ratio and the time makes sense, and we agree on those things, you and I are going to end up doing the same thing, right? And if there's something
Yeah.
I do that you don't, or vice versa, it's just because one of us is like, I'm not convinced would be the reason. But if I was convinced in the same rationale, we would probably be doing the same thing. So I don't think we're going to disagree on much, but I think there's so many times where I worry about putting my training out there or sharing what I'm doing, because it doesn't make any damn sense to train as much as I do or to do some of the things I do. So the 1% that I do, Steve, and I've actually gotten to a point where the constraints of my life dictate the degree that I can do these. I have been treating my volume kind of like the stock market. Like, how much time do I have to invest? Can I put the money in, and what's the return right now based upon like demands from becoming the co-director? So when I can, I train twice in a given day. And when I can't, I train once. And then the amount of volume that I do in that session is going to be dependent upon the amount of time I have in that day. And if I have one time slot, but it's 2 hours, I will do 2 a day worth of training in one session. And that sucks. It's not as good as splitting it up from a quality perspective. So that's one example of a 1% is when I can get to the gym twice, but it's an option based upon my time gating. And then I kind of just right now, I have a list of all the things I want to get done in the week. I know how I would organize them. And then the things that can have higher volume, but will probably be pretty good even with lower volume. And the things that I know I need a higher volume to kind of move the needle on. And that really comes down to my perspective of me going, all right, I'm getting closer and closer and closer to this genetic ceiling. But I also, we apply like being a quote unquote advanced lifter or genetic ceiling when we talk about it, sometimes like your whole body. And that's just not the way things work, right? So I haven't done direct forearm training. I've done very little direct ab training because I grew up doing martial arts. I was in the military and I did track and field in high school. So like I always had really, really good abs. And I think just genetically they have decent structure. But Steve, I don't know about you, man. It's all relative to what you get compared to. I was looking at my pictures at WBF Worlds 2025, and I was like, my abs are not as well defined and as blocky as some of these guys near me, and maybe I should actually start training abs again. So I've been basically thinking like, what muscles in my body that are visible and will enhance my physique to even a small degree are not advanced, because those won't need as much volume. So like my forearms, my traps, my abs, and my tibialis anterior, which you got right, nice job. I would say those are all like intermediate compared to everything else. And even like things like my infraspinatus, I haven't ever directly trained that. It's got a lot of indirect work, but that's a kind of a chunk of muscle you can see there on your back. Those are all like optional muscles because they do get a lot of indirect work that I will put in, 15 to 20 sets if I can in a week. But if not, it's going to be like 5 to 10. So that's one example. And you won't find me recommending people to train their infraspinatus or their forearms or their tibialis anterior anywhere on the internet because it's silly. But I have silly aspirations, and there's like investment is relative, right? So if you're a billionaire, the investment decisions you can make are entirely different to someone who only has, a couple $100s in a savings account, right? So that's not a perfect comparison. But it's actually the opposite comparison, because a billionaire, they get more money off an investment because they can really reap the rewards, the amount of interest from an absolute sense of money. I think for us though, I'm thinking like, okay, well, where can I add muscle at all? I could invest 40 sets into some muscles at a certain point and do everything right. And maybe it doesn't grow at all just because it's that developed.
Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
But I might have some muscles that I could invest in. So even though it seems silly to do tibialis training or ab training or trap training or forearm training or what have you, if those are the only things that can grow in your body, they're like the only investment that would even be worthwhile, is another way to look at it, which I think is a totally different perspective that most people wouldn't think of.
Yeah, it's interesting actually because I have started training some things directly that I previously didn't. Like I'm doing glute kickbacks. I never, like 5 years ago, would have looked and thought, oh, I'm going to do glute kickbacks. But no, I'm doing glute kickbacks. I actually only recently introduced direct adductor training, which most bodybuilders do by default. But I have always had fine adductors. Where I'm like, they're fine, but I've never directly trained them, so maybe they can grow even more. I guess the cool thing with what you're doing there, Eric, is it's kind of like a small win in that those areas, like you said, you could push them and not know if you guys that they're growing, or maybe they're not even growing. It's so slow you can't really tell, but you can tell probably from the areas that haven't. Like I could tell, like I talk about it a lot, my calves definitely grew from using lengthened partials. Like that research definitely helped put me into a position where they actually kind of could start growing. And my abs, not like you, were not well developed. I've trained the hell out of them for a long time, and they've definitely thickened up a ton. But yeah, now you make me question if I pulled back a bit on maybe some of that ad work and just kind of held them and then put it into, I don't know, like one of these fringe muscle groups like traps again, one I've never needed to directly train. Could I get a bit more out there? But yeah, it is playing with those final bits of investment, basically, like where can I best spend it? Because I'm at a point with, and probably similar with you, like every session, every week, you basically leave it like you couldn't really add any more without it detracting, basically. Like you are at your limit and then you go again. So whereas a lot of people, they are nowhere near that limit, but they don't need to be because they don't need that level of investment to see a great return. Whereas we kind of do for the return that we want, and we're willing to spend kind of in a irrational almost sense, you could argue with some people. We view it as rational. But it's interesting because one of the things you mentioned there is, at least this is somewhere where we may differ, but I think our perspectives come at it similarly, was AM and PM training, or twice daily training. That's something I did for 3 years, I think. Like I'd do 12 sessions, basically 6 days a week, and I'd split them all into 2. But I don't know what changed for me when I dropped it, but I just went back to 1 time a day, and I was like, this is so much more my preference. And similar, it takes 2.5 hours for me to get the volume of work that I need done. And my gym is actually only like a 5-minute walk away, so I could split it up. But for like my preferences and my daily demands and the routine I get into, it just works so much better just getting it all done, dusted. Don't need to worry about going back. It's not to say I might not split it up in future, but there's just something about that. And also, I guess practically, when I think about it, the gym is so much quieter at the time I go. And if I went in the evening or when I next would probably go, it'd probably be really rammed and might not be optimal from a stress perspective and time efficiency perspective and everything like that. But that is interesting, definitely, obviously. And that's definitely, I don't think though, I think there's many bodybuilders that will be listening who won't think of like doing more sets as a 1%er. They'll be like, I think they won't even believe that more volume will provide them better results. They're like, no. I don't talk about adding more set volume, that you don't need more. Maybe a 1%er is doing a bit of cardio to improve your insulin sensitivity or something like that. And then that's where we're probably, I imagine, both agree and be like, just be better off spending that time doing more sets, probably, if you can recover from it, versus like just trying to hopefully increase insulin sensitivity, which I think is overblown.
Yeah, a large part of this comes from like how well educated are you and where do you get your information sources? I remember when I was in 2005, I had a pill case like I was a 82-year-old guy with, diabetes and cardiovascular disease, like trying every supplement under the sun because I didn't know how to parse like information. And I was like, well, the only harm is that I'm spending money and I care about this. So I'll lighten my wallet. If only 10% of these supplements help me, then this is a really good idea. I look back on that and I'm almost positive now that I was probably taking in some things that were actively harming me, just knowing how crappy the supplement industry was and what it was at that time. And it was, the regulation was worse. So yeah, some things had probably literally nothing in them. Some probably had harmful things in them. I was probably doing some inadvertent light doping at the time. Fortunately, it was more than 20 years ago. But I mean, like, like, I think what I know about the supplement industry now, and just that it's not neutral to positive and it's just a financial cost, that it is very sharky and super shady. And there are
Eric,
supplements that I
what's
was
your
taking.
stack?
Yes.
What's your
My
stack?
current stack of supplements? Yeah. So I take creatine, and that's it. No, that's actually not true. I have some targeted micronutrient supplementation that I do because I get my dietary, like, and I do dietary analysis semi regularly. So like, I had relatively low ferritin, not way low, but low enough, and it actually started happening when I was ramping up my volume. So I think it has had to do with being kind of in this constant state of having high hepcidin, which can block iron absorption a little bit, and being pretty inflammatory, and just beating myself down and depleting my iron stores. So I've actually been supplementing with iron, and I'm going to get my blood work done and to
That
see if
sounds
I'm
good.
back into yeah, iron stronger, baby.
Supplementing with iron. Yeah.
That's right. More sets of iron and also taking iron. So.
Yeah.
So actually, no, my quote unquote supplement stack is a little more than that. I take a multi, it's a greens powder, but it's actually a multi that, Cliff Harvey actually formulated, called Good Green Vitality. But anyway, so I'm very fortunate. I have the relationship with Optimum Nutrition, so I take their whey, and
Hell yeah.
yeah, so they're great, and I got their creatine. So, but it's pretty much just creatine, whey, and then iron and a multivitamin. That's it. And yeah, like, so the micronutrient supplementation I do has shifted when I do see something's a little low for whatever reason during a certain phase. But yeah, like, I I have thought about, like, citrulline maleate's decent, or maybe betaine or beta alanine, but like, I'm just not convinced by those mattering. And I do think there is risk, especially for a drug tested athlete, to go that route. But that's where most bodybuilders' heads go.
Yeah.
Or they go like, oh, I should get my step count up, or maybe I should do some sleep hygiene things. But those, I find, are a lot more automatic. Like, I
Hmm.
don't, it doesn't require much intentionality. Like, you take a pill, you set up your life so you get the steps you need. You do everything you can to optimize your sleep. Um, and mine's still not optimal. I still wake up in the middle of the night. Like, but I don't have a ton of agency there. But where I have a lot of agency is, how do I train? Um, you know, um, okay. Here's one other thing I do, Steve, is I don't have a good point estimate or idea, and maybe James Steele will change this, once he's done reanalyzing the Nunes data, of where the real world benefits of higher protein intakes stop. Um, and I have a decent idea from the meta regression we did, led by Martin Ruffalo, that I did with Trexler in a deficit. Ironically, there's less data on that than there was a surplus, because we did some good modeling and like nonlinear fits to that regression. But I'm not 100% sure where the benefits end for in a surplus or in maintenance. I think the closest thing we've got actually is the Stronger by Science article that Greg Nuckols wrote, where he kind of talked about, realistically, the plateau is probably somewhere around 1.7 to 2.3 to 2.4 ish grams per kilogram. And then do you throw out this one study that's an outlier or not? And how little do you want to go? So one thing I've done is, I'm very convinced there's no downside to it, right?
Yeah.
So I have actually jacked my protein intake up. I think we talked about this last time when we were talking about James, to around like the 2.4, 2.5 grams per kilogram, which I think is probably far in excess of what I could benefit from. But this is one
Yeah.
where there truly is no downside. Like, you could take the supplement mindset, which I think is flawed, and go, yeah, there's if you're in a surplus, correct, and go, now it is just spending money. Like, there's not really a downside here.
You've got
But
protein
it may be a
powder on
waste.
tap.
Absolutely. I
good.
got that big op nutrition money, man. That's actually what I put in the apartments I bought out. It's just stacks and stacks of protein powder. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm on the same page with that. I'm around that 1.2 as well. And yeah, I mean, my calories are ridiculous when I get into an off season. They kind of just, I have such an adaptive metabolism, it gets ridiculous. Actually, this is going to be, maybe I was actually interested to ask your thoughts on this. I don't know if I should
Well,
ask now.
I want to
or at the
ask
end
you,
of an episode.
what stuff are you
Okay.
doing besides just eating more protein? Like, what are you doing that if the 1%?
Yeah, it's funny because it's exactly
You
the
don't
same
get to
as
just
you.
get all my secrets. I need to know yours. So, yeah.
Like a lot of the one percenters are exactly as you demonstrated in that they're kind of actually what a lot of people just think of as the big rocks, like the sleep and things like that. But I think a lot of people they think they have good sleep hygiene, but you talk to them and like, yeah, if I wake up, I look at my phone, I have my phone in bed and so on and so forth. Or like I take caffeine quite regularly past 4 p.m. or something like this. It's like, man, these are the one percenters that start actually, that they're bigger than 1% probably, that actually start adding up. But similar to you, I don't really think of that as, it's like we're living, actually back to what you were talking about, like bodybuilding, it's a lifestyle for us. It's just kind of who we are. So my day to day probably looks like lots of these like little 1% behaviors, similar to you, Eric, that we don't really view them like that. It's just like living a healthy life. So one thing I can say I do, like to give an objective or like a cement thing, is blue light blockers. So I do like to wear my orange specs in the evening. I used to do them like 3 hours before bed, and I was like, I'm just not enjoying my evening because there's 3 hours of just dark orange life. So I do it for the last like hour and a half now, and it's just become part of that kind of routine. And I kind of feel like at least this is one of those situations where it is just, you buy them as a one-off. I can't think of a downside to what there could be. The upside is arguable mechanisms, like it blocks the blue light, so maybe it helps for kind of sleep onset with the melatonin interaction, but there's not good data on it. But that's one thing I can at least think of. I do take more supplements than you, Eric, though, and your comments surrounding supplements do worry me that I should not supplement with so many things. Not that I supplement with a lot. It's like a garlic tablet because I don't eat much garlic, or I take omega-3s because I don't eat much fatty fish, a vitamin D, magnesium,
I eat a lot of
zinc.
fish. And I get my magnesium and my vitamin D tested. So like those are things that I have conditionally taken, right? But I also,
that might be
how
1%.
you interpret that, I would say so. And I think that's the blood work. Yeah, 100%. But I think blood work can go poorly. I think far too many bodybuilders who get blood work done, they just want to make their numbers look pretty, and they won't actually sit down with their doctor and actually talk through it, and then ask for and do more information. Like there's so many things like that people don't know. Like for example, here's one. I eat a lot of fatty fish, right? So I don't supplement with omega-3s and I've actually even had a blood test done that I did with Ryan Anthony, shout out, because he's a PhD student in this area. I actually finished his PhD to look at how much in the lipid bilayer of my body am I incorporating, EPA and DHA, and I'm in like, the top profile. So like, I know I'm getting enough fish, and I also getting the numbers there, but even like there's no such thing as a mercury-free fish, even if you eat low mercury fish. So I get my mercury tested, and I have been right upon the cusp of what is considered, a clinically too high level of mercury. However, mercury is really only an issue. Oh, okay, there's even more complexity here. If you get like a urinary test of mercury, that's not really testing your methyl mercury that is getting stored in your body. And that can be very low when you might actually have high methyl mercury from a blood test, which is more representative of potential toxicity. Another thing that people don't realize is that you can have a slightly high or reasonably high mercury level, and it could be a problem just looking at the number. We don't understand, or you don't know, that selenium actually binds to mercury and makes it inactive and not toxic, right? And many of the fish that we consume, and even some that are actually quite high or reasonably high in mercury, are also giving you a lot of selenium. So it's really like you need to get your mercury and your selenium levels tested. And then if your mercury is a little borderline like mine, I'm not even going to get my mercury tested next time. I'm just going to get my selenium levels checked to see how high they are, to know if my current mercury levels are an issue. and then I modify my fish intake, So like, yeah, and like you start taking one form of iron at the wrong time, like post workout, you're not going to get the same level of absorption. I think if you're just looking at it as I'm going to try to interpret my own blood work, you're going to be missing out. Like for me to interpret
Mm,
my blood work, right? I'm reading research. I'm leveraging my PhD level of like interest and knowledge in this. And most importantly, I'm talking to a clinician and not just my own personal doctor, but other doctors I know who are in the sports medicine space. And I don't think most people are doing that. So here's one of those things where it's a 1% that I do, but I actually would not recommend people do this. I haven't done a YouTube video on here's how to interpret your blood work, but how many YouTube videos are out there like that? Because I
yeah.
actually think that there's too much depth, complexity, and second and third order effects to even if I did my best to put out how to check your blood work like on YouTube, I'd be too concerned about people not watching it fully or just over extrapolating or just kind of going to the highlights. I go, what should I get checked and what should I take? Let me just copy Eric Helms. I think it would actually be more harmful. So that's one of those things that I do that I wouldn't recommend to others. And I don't want to sound arrogant, but it's just I don't think they would have the capability to do that well, and
Hmm.
not risk doing something harmful. Going back to comment about supplements, if it's I won't take anything unless it's third party tested. Period.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it particularly because the US is particularly bad, right, for
Yep.
supplements and being unregulated? The UK has a few more regulations.
Better.
I don't know if it is better. Is New Zealand kind of similar to the UK or similar to the US or just not
Somewhere
not up to Eric's
probably.
standards still though?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't give me the sense of confidence that third party testing would.
Yeah.
And also just think about it, Steve. Like if you or I failed the drug test, think about what that would do to the natural bodybuilding community and like faith in us. And we get, because you see what happens when someone comes out and goes, no, I failed from a supplement. It's like, yeah, whatever, liar. You're a
Yeah.
narcissist, sociopath, terrible person. Like I would feel like I let down everyone and like my colleagues, my friends, my family, even though it was just like an inadvertent thing. And like, it wouldn't even give me performance benefit how precise the testing is. Like it just can't happen, man. So that's one of those things where, like buying insurance doesn't really make sense financially, like the risk versus reward and the amount you have to
Yes.
spend over time. Even the people who actually get in a car accident and they pay for it, they're like, well, that still didn't pay off what I paid in, you know?
Yeah.
The only time insurance companies are not making money is when like a massive earthquake or fire takes out the whole like area that they serve. And then they try to get out of it. They try to get a bailout or they have a clause that says, acts of God, like you find out that your flood insurance doesn't count for big floods. And you're like, what? So of course you hear about that stuff in the US. So like, this is one of those cases where I will never look back and be like, oh, well, you know what? I regret paying for that insurance. Like third party testing for any drug tested athlete, I think I think it's foolish not to do it, honestly. But yeah, there are some places where you can mitigate that risk a lot more than others, depending on the country. I don't know the implications of the UK not being part of the EU anymore, but I mean, many UK supplement suppliers are selling across Europe, so they probably have to comply anyway. But
Mm.
like, yeah, the EU is pretty good. There's certain levels of compliance there, but um, you also have to think about where does all the various ingredients get produced, shipped from, and manufactured? Because if there's any links in that supply chain where they kind of fall through the cracks of the regulatory bodies for the area you're purchasing, there's potential for contamination. And that is true it completely inadvertent, like the supplement company itself may not know this, and they don't even necessarily know all of the supply lines for getting something from another manufacturer. So you just have to be very diligent. If you have to be more aware and more diligent if you're not going to do third party testing, in my opinion, because then now you're having to control even more variables. So
Yeah.
I know that's a big burden to ask of supplement companies, and it's easier for those who are making a lot of money and a lot of kind of the quote unquote smaller evidence based ones that are popular and in niche communities just can't afford it. But I honestly pass the cost on to the consumer because I will pay twice as much to get a third party tested supplement personally. because it's worth it to me. And I think it should be worth it to others, but I can't impose my values on them.
Yeah. I imagine I just, off the top of my head, I imagine there's a lot of pro bodybuilders who on show day take a pre-workout, like a pump aid, like pre-stage, that is definitely not third-party tested. And that's probably one of the worst perpetrators of having another substance in there that's banned. And that's kind of been my kind of guiding rule, was like, I don't do pre-workouts, pump products, it doesn't matter. I will not do those. But single ingredient ones, I've been a bit like, if it's garlic, I'm like, it's garlic. But like you say, like, I guess you just don't know if it's not third party tested at that point. So maybe you make me rethink as once I get through the stack that I've got right now, I'll make sure I actually get third party tested ones. Because I think it is, again, for someone like myself, like you, like the level we take this to, it's just not, the risk to reward isn't, talking about risk to reward, it's just not worth it. So maybe that's a 1% actually, as a pro natural bodybuilder, is third party tested supplements, or just not taking the damn supplement that you just don't know, like the benefits pretty low anyway. It's a supplement, right? Is the benefit there? So same for protein powders? I'd imagine that's still
100%.
significant enough
Absolutely.
risk. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think so. Yes.
Eric, we've been talking for over an hour. I realize we might have to pick up this thread for the next episode. What do you think?
Yeah, I left the scaremonger until the end. But no, I think, let me ask you this real quick. Have you noticed a difference with the blue light blockers?
It's hard to say. That is like supplements, right? Like I take ashwagandha as an example. And do I notice, or creatine, any supplement almost, like, do I notice having it or not? It's like, just don't know.
I think I notice ashwagandha when I take it.
Oh, do you? Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I only get the KSM 66 because it is,
Same.
if you actually, that's good. Because if you look at that, that's a licensed product like Creapure or Carnosine for beta alanine. And if you go to the KSM 66 manufacturer or Carnosine or Creapure, you see they are third party tested. So if you're getting a supplement that is single ingredient, ashwagandha, KSM 66, it's almost third party tested. There could be some transport or other things going on, or if they're housing it, but it's almost like getting a third party tested supplement if it's single ingredient. So anyway, I feel like I feel just a little better and more overall stress resilient when I take ashwagandha, and that is something that I take on and off. I took it during prep a lot more than I did in the off season, but that's actually a good one. But anyway, like, I have all of my screens set to being on, like the blue shift at night.
So you kind of get
it's hard for me to justify doing that.
True. So that's where it gets me. So I just again, it's just one of those where it's become such an ingrained habit, and so if I don't have Eric, I take them with me when I travel, so it's like I just always have them. So it's hard to now compare. I've literally had them every night on for like the last decade.
Look at this. Next time we're on, let's check in on each other. I'm going to ask if you've committed to third party testing, and I am going to actually get myself a pair of blue light blockers, because why not? Can't hurt, right?
Get those not third party tests. I don't know if that's the word, but make sure they're tested, because some of them are just, they don't actually do
They're
anything.
just orange. Hey, send me a link.
Or not even orange.
Yeah,
I can hook you up.
Yeah. You hook me up, and I'll talk to you more offline about third party testing.
Guys, thank you for listening. We've got a name now. We've had some good chats. Any questions surrounding this topic in particular, I think we'll do a bit more of a deep dive next time. And we appreciate your ears. Anything you want to leave the listeners with, Eric?
No, just thank you for helping us build a stronger culture. Excellent name suggestion. And my agreeableness is going to have me go with Steve on that one. And also appreciate everyone's willingness to indulge my self-indulgence, talking about my neurobiology and my new role. I do appreciate the platform. Like, it's good to feel acknowledged, but I also understand, like, I hope we deliver, that we talk about stuff that's useful and helpful to you guys too.
We will. I'm terrible for it as well, Eric. I just go into interviewer mode, and I just want to learn about the person in front of me. It's a trait that I have. So,
well,
you do.
And I'll be like, sure, we could talk about me, So, yeah.
Guys, thank you so much. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.